Good day, fellow deal makers. Welcome to the Deal Scout. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, learning a ton, and I'm so grateful for the amount of engagement and the questions you guys have, and also the deals that come because of this show. So much gratitude, much love to you. As always, if you have questions or you'd like to know about specific types of deals, thedealscout.com, fill out a quick form, and maybe even get you on the show. But guys, this is not about me today. I want to introduce you to a new friend, Mr. Seth, who I met at a NIBA event. NIBA is the National Investment Banking Association, where he's a leader there, and it was my first investment banking conference, and it was phenomenal. Everyone here should check out NIBA, get involved. It's super cool. But Seth, super nice to meet you. Super nice to dive in with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who is Mr. Seth Farbman?
I'm still trying to figure that out, but before we figure that out together, and I lay down on the couch, no, thank you for having me. It was great to meet you, Aniba. So rarely do you meet someone who's got sort of a hybrid of both worlds that you seem to bring to the table in terms of like communication and a podcast. And I'd seen some of your material and content even before we met. So you were easy to spot out in the crowd saying, "Oh, okay, I think I know that guy." But
Yeah.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have it's good to be a guest. Now, you have a podcast show that is a globally ranked show, and you have multiple businesses that you've built and sold, and you just have an incredible story. So let's start with your podcast, because I just think it's a great thing for deal makers to have podcast shows or have a way to create content and meet people. What's your podcast show?
Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out. Some of the stats. It's called Startup to Stock Exchange, and it wasn't a primary focus. And I know a lot of people are in the podcast business, and kudos to them for figuring that out. But for me, it was a question of how can I offer value to the CEOs and the companies that we work with. And I think, and of course, there's some component of, I don't want to say self promotion, but getting your name out there and marketing and doing your basic efforts to get your name out there. But I really found that the podcast accomplishes two things. First of all, it opens up huge doors for relationships because I invite these people on. And second of all, it's an amazing opportunity to collect content, which can then, whether for me or for the company that's coming on, to slice and dice the videos, create shorts, get it onto the different social platforms. So it really is a win-win-win-win-win situation for anybody that we have on. And it's called Startup to Stock Exchange, where we really follow the journey from, the CEO who starts something in his basement or garage, as the stories go, and or has that light bulb. And like, what's the journey like? We all want to know. I mean, even myself, I've had a couple exits, like you mentioned, but I've never started a publicly traded company, and it's usually pretty engaging and practical conversation that comes out of it.
Yeah. And you guys have done about 70 something episodes. So having 70 conversations with someone who has taken the company public or been a part of the public markets, what's a common thread in terms of character traits or personality that you have seen amongst those different interviews?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Nobody's ever asked me. It really runs the gamut. I mean, there are some CEOs that we work with on the public company side that you'd be fairly surprised to find out that they really want to stay under the radar. Like they don't want to do posts, they don't want their name out there. Not for anything like nefarious. They're just low-key guys. They might be biotech or pharma CEOs that have this phenomenal publicly traded company that we work with on NASDAQ, but the guy's like, I just want to talk science. I don't want to get my name or my picture out there. He's like, I don't want to be Gary V. I just want to, be in the lab. But then you do have others that they're not the science guys, right? They don't know anything about it, but man, can they sell and can they story tell? And those are the guys that have the personality. So I don't think that there's one theme throughout the different types because from our perspective of what we do currently with the company I run VStock, we're agnostic. Means we can work with companies that are doing esports, EV, as I said, biotech, pharma, but they all figured it out, and I guess they all want to take the leap to the grand stage of being on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. That's the common theme.
Yeah. The the work that you do with people. Why don't you share your two businesses that you run now?
Okay.
And then I want to hear something about the exit stories because you've had
Exits.
an
Okay.
incredible journey.
The 15-year overnight success stories, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so the current my current day looks like I spend time. I own V Stock Transfer with some great partners, and we are a stock transfer agent. We service roughly about 900 issuers, and I would say a good majority of them are NASDAQ companies. They've come to us through the IPO process. And basically that means we manage the cap table, the shareholder list. We interact. We've got about 45 people here in the office to the right of me. They interact with shareholders on a day-to-day basis. Things like, I lost my shares. I want to, split my shares. I want to give my grandkids shares. So all that day-to-day boring administrative stuff, legal compliance is what we do. And then I also have a company called Share Media, where we are a LinkedIn marketing firm, primarily for public companies and those in the surrounding areas. So whether it's a security attorney or auditors or bankers, anybody in the public capital markets type of arena. So we work with them hand in hand in terms of LinkedIn branding, content, connections, things of that sort. So the two sort of lend itself to each other because we're working with mostly CEOs one-on-one and helping them through that journey.
Which came first, the media side or the
The
public side?
transfer side, the transfer side by far. I mean, the transfer side is we've been around for about 13 years. And it was a byproduct of all these companies saying, how do we better tell our story that the LinkedIn side came about. And frankly, it was an accident, right? As the best ideas come to fruition or through accidents. A buddy of mine who was a NASDAQ CEO of a med tech company said, hey, forget about the traditional IR and PR. Just do for me what you do for yourself. You've got 30,000 followers. Help me get there. And we worked with him on a month-to-month basis, and it was wildly successful for him. And then we tried it for the next guy and the next guy, and here we are. But by far, VStock is in my blood. 13 years, and prior to that, all corporate compliance services were primarily the focus. And Josh, the takeaway is like nothing I've ever done is sexy or unique or patented. It's just listen to the pain points that are out there in the industry, and I was just trying to plug up the holes as fast as I could go.
Yeah. LinkedIn, and you have 30,000 followers, so you're a macro influencer on LinkedIn. You're absolutely crushing it. Now, everyone here, I think you should go follow Seth Farbman,
Yeah,
Farbman. Seriously, because
thank you.
when I met Seth face to face, I said, hey, and I've got a decent following myself
Oh,
over
you're a rock
30,000.
star. Come on, admit it.
Yeah.
You're a rock
Well,
star. You're
thank you. I
good.
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We could lift each other up. But I went to you and I said, hey, would you, I humbled myself and I said, hey, Seth, would you take a look at my LinkedIn and tell me how I can improve it? And you gave me some actionable advice on narrowing, like, what do I do for whom and making it very clear and then putting that kind of content out. I went back and because of that, I started creating content that people might see today on my YouTube shorts. What is a pipe investment? What does a Series
I
79
noticed
exam look
those.
like?
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
because of you. So thank you
Uh,
for that.
okay, well, thank you for the shout out. But it is true. It's
Yeah.
great. That is good content. People need to know that, and I think it's important. And I remind myself this all the time. Just because you know something doesn't mean you can assume that everybody else knows about it. And so, if I want to do a post about something that's educational, part of me is saying, it's going to be silly. It's not going to be well received. Everybody knows about it, but they don't. So you put it out there and you see what happens.
Question I got to ask you. You guys do a lot of work on legal compliance and then you've got a media company, right? So we're dealing with some government regulations and non-government regulators and we've got a lot of regulators in the world of public business. And I'm
Sure.
learning this and I'm like, holy moly, I was scared to have a podcast show. How do you manage for a public company coming in and they're like, what can I say? What can I not say? How do I post something? How do I share this? what's insider trading? How do I get around, like not to get around, how do I get my message out there in the world, free writing perspective, all of this information? How do you manage all
Yeah.
of that?
Well, first of all, I surround myself with phenomenal people. My partner is a total securities nerd, thank God, and he loves the nuances, and he's a straight shooter, and he keeps us safe and sound.
Yeah.
Hopefully that continues. Um, and also along those lines, Josh, in other words, there's no substitute for having phenomenal counsel, right? So everything that these guys do, whatever direction they want to go, they're gonna, check with their in-house counsel, their outside securities counsel. But there's no doubt that it is a learning curve for every one of these CEOs because up until this point, their main job was running their business. And once they come into my world, IPOs, Reg A, SPAC, pipes, they're now wearing an entirely additional hat of shareholder communication, shareholder interaction, raising capital. So there's definitely a learning process, dealing with the cap table and answering to investors now. It's a learning process.
Yeah. And social media is a great asset. Have you seen people do it wrong and where their social media or their IR became a liability because of the CEO or one of the executives on the team?
I don't see too often like those horror stories where, somebody blows up the company because of a bad post, but it does happen. I think it's more of a lack of just focus on it. And it could be something as silly as, you and I meet at a conference. First thing I'm going to do is Google your name. I don't even have the patience very often to go to the website about us, who we are. I've already like gotten bored. I just got to Google your name, and the first thing that comes up is your LinkedIn profile. And it's comical when the CEO of a large company has as his profile him and his dog. I mean, again, no offense to the pet lovers. Or if it's a group photo, right? Him and his buddies, him and four guys. I don't know which is him and which is his friend. Like small things like that make a big difference. Um, I'm still to this day shocked at how many publicly traded companies have spent millions, right, to get to that point, ring the NASDAQ bell, break out the champagne, but yet on their LinkedIn profile, they don't say, hey, we're a public company, we're on NASDAQ, here's our ticker symbol. It's just a lot of lost opportunity that I think a lot of companies can focus on. And if they don't have the time to do it themselves, then hire a team. But
Yeah.
uh, but those are the things that we see a lot.
The family office that I work with, part of our due diligence when we're looking at a founding team is we look at their LinkedIn. We look
Oh,
at,
really?
we do, yeah, we
Yeah.
do research on the people because when you're investing in a business, you're investing in the people, the management team, and we look at what they post, and we do background checks and such, but like
Sure.
the first place we look is on their LinkedIn.
Absolutely. It's for better or for worse, and as simple as it sounds, we live in a very visual world, and those are first impressions that you have to take advantage of.
Yeah. All right. So explain V stock. What the heck is it for people listening who have no clue what goes
Yeah.
on behind the scenes at a public company?
So we are the low guys on the totem pole. You've got your investment bankers and your lawyers and your auditors. So, even from a cost standpoint, we're a couple $100 a month. But what's most important to me is that I look at our role as a pretty significant one. We are the gatekeeper or that window between the shareholders and the company. So the first decision that a company that's raising money or going public or coming to you for family office opportunities, they have to decide, do I want to engage a transfer agent? So on the most basic level, we are a holder of the shareholder list, the cap table, but very often they come to us at two points in their life. Number one, they've raised money already, and they've raised money from 40, 50, 60, 70 different people. At that point, the Excel sheet is just a nightmare for the CFO. He's throwing his hands up trying to keep up with it. And for the 100, $200 a month, you put it on a platform with a registered transfer agent. You have online access, and it's just an administrative help. The second time that people come to us is when they are ready to raise real money. They're ready to go to the funds, and they have to act as if. I mean, they cannot present themselves printing stock certs out of their basement in their pajamas, and they get a transfer agent to show the potential shareholders that we're real, we're taking this seriously, and that's when they come to us.
Mhm.
So we maintain those records till IPO day. Then a big part of our role is working with the company and the exchanges to close the IPO, distribute those shares, and then we continue on with the life of the public company. Things like stock splits, dividends, annual meetings, proxy voting, anything to deal with shareholder compliance, communication. That's the kind of stuff that we get involved with. And I'll digress for 1 second, Josh. I'll tell you, my last three companies that I sold was in Edgar compliance, background check compliance, and incorporating companies. And I swore to myself, if I do another business, I want three things. I want nothing in compliance. I don't want a small ticket item, and I don't want something that I have to chase people to collect on. Well, welcome to the transfer agent world. We're regulated by the SEC. It's, not the most expensive, service you're going to have. And, some of these guys we do have to chase down. So, compliance, I guess, and I have this love-hate relationship.
Yeah. So why did you say yes to that?
Hmm, that's a great question. I think that a lot of it has to do with timing and the people that you are speaking with. First of all, I was talking to my partner, Shai Stern and Yoel Goldfeder. No better partners to get involved with, is first of all. Second of all, after I've been in the small cap industry at that point, probably for about 9 or 10 years, we have this amazing audience. And so I go to sleep every night thinking, okay, we've got the audience. What can we turn the faucet on to deliver to them that they would want to buy or appreciate?
Yeah.
We've done a couple of other services which were well received. And stock transfer fit that profile of something that we could really shake up the industry with.
Yeah. So from the public side, we understand, the benefits of having, a transfer agent like you guys who can manage instead of Excel spreadsheet and the CFO's getting a call at 3 in the morning from a grandma who wants to, give to
That,
this charitable foundation and then
that
to her
happens.
dog,
That
right?
happens. Yeah.
It happens, I'm sure. I do want to know the craziest request you ever gotten.
It's not the craziest, but it happens often where now that we're in this world of Reg A,
Yeah.
which, if you haven't explained it yet, I'm sure you will, you're raising small amounts of money from people, a lot of people, but those people, not to their fault, they're not the most savvy when it comes to the capital markets. So I can't tell you how many times like there's a Reg A. One of our clients has 22,000 individual mom and pops, and we maintain those records. And people will say, "Hey, V stock, yeah, I didn't really want to do that investment. I've got my receipt. Can I get a refund?" And I'm like, you can't just like no backsies when it comes back to stock purchasing. So we get those types of questions from time to time.
I had my fingers crossed. I didn't mean to hit the enter
Right,
button,
exactly.
All
Very
right.
similar. Very
Yeah.
similar. Yeah.
All right. So we see the benefits to the public company. What about on the investor side? What kind of benefits is there to have a strong transfer agent relationship from the investor side? Maybe a family office or maybe an institutional investor.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a unique perspective that a lot of people don't ask about. I think that first of all, it's super critical. I mean, I'll tell you that we invested recently in something, and not to name all the transfer agents, but it took us 6 weeks to get a statement. And throughout those 6 weeks, the stock, went down probably 60, 70%. And it is what it is. I mean, so I think responsiveness and accessibility and knowledge is super important to meet those investors. And they don't always distinguish between our role and the company, right? They sometimes think that we're one and the same. So if we're good and we're responsive and polite and all that, they'll be like, "Oh, this is a great company. If they do another round, maybe I'll get involved." But there've been some Reg A's that I've invested in, and it was such a bad experience with that other TA that when the company called me back for an additional round, I was like, "I'm good." I don't want to take that risk of not being able to access my data when the time is right.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, you would get a printed out stock certificate with it stamped, notarized.
Some still do. I mean, we're the largest user of FedEx in our entire zip code, I think, because of the dozens or hundreds of physical certs we get in and send out on a daily basis.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
I
absolutely.
I had no clue. I thought everything was digital nowadays. So there's
No,
still
no,
some printed paper
it's
stocks.
50-50. I mean, CEOs have that option, investors have that option, and some of the companies just are old school that my shareholders want to touch, feel that piece of paper, stick it in the drawer, and know that it's there. And I respect that also. That's
Yeah.
fine.
I like old school, man. I like paper. I still print out some of my series. I'm taking the Series 63 now, so I print it out so I can read it.
Oh,
The
that's
digital
it.
stuff
Yeah,
doesn't work too well in my brain. But
absolutely.
the businesses that you built prior, you were in background checks. What else? What were the others?
So we started with vintage filings where we did
Okay,
SEC filings for publicly traded companies. We sold that to PR Newswire.
nice.
We had a company called V Corp where we did incorporation services, where we sold that to Walters Kluwer. Um, we now have a company called V State Filings, which does the same thing. It's many years later.
Yeah.
And then VCheck did background checks and due diligence. So very, very similar to the point you had mentioned before on the investment side. Anytime a bank was going to do an IPO or a SPAC, they want to vet, each member of the board of directors, do the background checks, and we sold that to a private equity firm.
Yeah, nice. So you've built a lot of businesses. How old are you? I know you're not supposed to ask someone at their age, but like, man, you've
Oh,
built three
I had this
exits.
great line, right? I had this great line recently, and I'm trying to remember it to use it more, where the hardest part about being in my late 30s is remembering that I'm in my early 50s. So I'm 52.
Yeah, that's great. Now, if for people maybe listening in, let me describe what I'm seeing. I'm looking through and I'm seeing, New York Stock Exchange. I see some tombstones. I see maybe some red herrings in the back. My eyes aren't that great, but I see a
Yeah,
pair of
yeah,
shoes, some green shoes. What is
yeah.
the significance of a green shoe in the world of stocks and IPOs and public companies?
So Green Tool definitely has a technical component to it when you're dealing with an offering and things like that. But oddly enough, the impetus behind it had nothing to do with that terminology.
Really?
Basically, over the years, we've enjoyed and had success at attending a ton of different conferences. And in the olden days, we would invite celebrities to hang at our booth. I mean, I'm dating myself when I mentioned that, like we had Jeremy Pivens from Entourage, we had Jeff Garland from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and we'd pay them to hang out at our booth for the day just to like draw a crowd, and it was awesome. Not so much anymore these days, but instead of handing out, pens and paper clips and widgets, how can we distinguish ourselves from the other sponsors and exhibitors at the booth? I saw online this guy Ari Solomon, and he created these beautiful sneakers for a lot of the baseball players. All-Star Game, every one of them was customized with a message, very unique. And the first couple times I saw him, I'm like, oh, I wish I could get one, but like I'm not into sports or I'm not in that industry. And finally, I was like, screw it. I called him up. I'm like, listen, I'm not a sports guy, but how can we work together? And he's like, what do you do? And we told him, I'm like, great. So we bought a pair for all of our salespeople, and they wear them to the conferences, and it's been a phenomenal conversation starter.
Yeah, those are great. So if you could have anybody now there, you could go back in time and they could be alive for one of your conferences. So the next event that you and I go to and we're hanging out at your booth and you could have any celebrity of the past or, present, who would you want to hang out at your booth with you?
Oh, that's a tough question. Wow, you got all the good ones.
Yeah, mine would be
Um,
Julia Roberts. My wife knows that. I would
yeah.
totally have her come to the booth because she would attract the Gene. What's the guy's name? Freaking from the movie. I forget. Oh, Richard
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 Gere.
Gere. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So who would you
Um,
have?
you know what? Kind of like everything that I do, I would actually be really strategic about it, and I have to do my research. I mean, probably what I would do is I would look up the top five Wall Street movies, right? Whether it's or maybe the TV show Billionaire
Yeah.
or Wolf of Wall Street, and I would just probably try to get one of those key characters so that it's not just a celebrity, but it's got that dual meaning where people associate that celebrity with IPOs and capital markets and success, things like that.
Yeah, I think everybody should watch Billions with Axe Capital.
Yeah, that's great.
Wendy she's such a great character. in, helping
They're all
people.
good. They're all good, and they depict the characters, each one in their role, pretty well.
Yeah. All right. So back
I,
back to deals. As you're building these things out, you've got your marketing company that's helping public companies do, investor relations and helping them, grow their businesses. What do you think in the world of investor relations, what is the most critical piece for a public company once they're public? What do you think is so important, especially maybe pushing through the LinkedIn audience?
I think they have to be authentic. I think as a public company, investors like to know that that CEO is out there hustling, working for their money, not just sitting behind a desk. And so take them on the journey with you. You had mentioned that we met at the NIBA conference. There are so many times where somebody will, a CEO will attend a conference, they'll sponsor a conference, they'll have an exhibit, they'll go and they'll come back. And I always joke about the analogy, like, if a tree falls in a forest and nobody puts it on LinkedIn, did it really happen? So like, why aren't these guys taking advantage of that? Like, promote the fact that you're going to be attending, that you're going to be speaking, invite people to connect with you, do a post about how it went or showing you up there as an authority, because you want to use all that storytelling power to present yourself as a thought leader in really whatever category you're in. So I think that from a PR standpoint, many people go public, put out a press release, they sit back and think that, hey, it's going to take care of itself. But we live in a very, noisy world where in order to cut through that, there's no one switch. You've got to do roadshows, you've got to do social media, you've got to do conference circuits, you've got to do, a little bit of everything to really get your name out there.
Yeah. What do you think the future of V stock looks like in share media? What does your future look like?
We love what we do, and I'm proud to say if you speak to any of our people, shout out to Lisa Lowe and David Mansbach and everybody here in the office, everybody really loves what they do. And so from the driver's seat that I'm in, right, I've never been with any of my prior companies for more than, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years. So the fact that we're at VStock for 13, we love being in that driver's seat of meeting great people, seeing great ideas, helping companies go on this journey. We work with hundreds of thousands of shareholders and we get to interact with them. So, I just see more of the same and trying to be innovative as the capital markets turn, right? I mean, new things pop up all the time. You've got Reg A, you've got SPACs, you've got direct listings, and we're just trying to be forward thinking and keep up with all that.
Yeah. So at these kind of conferences, what advice do you have for maybe founders who are looking, to raise capital or maybe go IPO one day, and they're going to go to a NIBA event? I know you're super involved in the leadership there and building that out. If I'm going and I'm going to present, and you could give some advice on presentation, because you get like 10 minutes, and then that guy who wears that sports coats and those running shoes, he will turn off your mic and he will be like, all right, you're
You
done.
saw that, right? You saw
Right?
that.
Yeah, it was great. I love that guy.
Yeah,
I don't know his
yeah.
name, but I love him. But what advice do you have for a founder who's going to get up there and present to investors and bankers, and what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's easy for me to give advice because I'm not that public company CEO up there, but from having presented in other capacities, I think that you want to engage the audience. Um, the biggest challenge that I see is when somebody, not to critique anybody, but it's just a fact, is that when they get up there and they read the PowerPoint that's on the screen word for word, meaning I don't need you to get up there and speak those words because I see those words. Tell me something that's off the screen that I'm gonna, find of value. Try to convey a message why investing today is important, not come check us out again in 6 or 9 months. Create, only if it's proper, create that fear of missing out. Like, why is it exciting today? I think that's something that's important to do, and to really know the audience that you're speaking to and to really understand the mechanics of your business. I'll tell you a quick story. We had a company that came to us, and Josh, I can't make this up. The guy says to me, we say to him, hey, we need your shareholder list. We'll upload it on the system. This way we're off to a good start. So he sends me the shareholder list. And on this shareholder list is Steph Curry, Taylor Swift. Who else did he had? Elon Musk, like a couple of others. And normally I like try to control myself, but I was like, all right, I'm just gonna call this guy and ask what's up. So I called him up. I'm like, John, you've got like the most incredible shareholder list of any client we've ever uploaded. I'm just curious, like, what was it like walking up to them, and how much did they like invest, and did you have to, chase them? So I hear this silence and this pause at the other side of the phone. And I'm like, John, he's like, oh, you mean you want my current shareholders, not who I want my shareholders to be? I'm like, yeah. We actually manage the cap table for real life current shareholders, not the dreams. And
No
we had to
way.
explain that to them.
He gave
Yeah.
you the hit list of the people
He
that he
gave us the hit
wants on.
list. I'm like, I'm not going after the hit list for you. You got to come to me once you've executed.
Yeah. Hey,
So,
Taylor, I've got this business. She's like, who are you? I'm Seth.
right.
You know? Wow, that is hilarious.
So we try to, guide people and the CEOs, like understand the mechanics of the IPO process, what we do, what the auditor does, what the bankers do, and then you'll be fine.
I'll tell you though, name dropping works. If you do honestly have that kind of shareholder, man, it is you use that all the time, right?
I was on a call yesterday. I kid you not. I almost like fell off my chair. I was on a Zoom and I was talking to this guy, and he has a phenomenal track record in the PR industry, right?
Yeah.
Print, magazine. And I was super impressed with him. At one point, we were talking about LinkedIn as a segue, and he first of all, he did validate the need for a personal brand simultaneous with corporate brand, for what that's worth.
Mhm.
And then he said to me, just very casually, he's a little bit of an older gentleman. He says, yeah, I remember back in those days, I sat with Reed and I told him that he's got to pivot from focusing on the resumes. I was like, sorry, could you just repeat what you said? He's like,
Reed.
yeah, Reed Hoffman, we were strategizing the best ways to move things forward. I was like, can I touch your hand? Like, but yeah, name dropping definitely goes a long way if it's real.
Yeah, I connected back in the day to Craig Newmark, the guy, Craigslist. And I remember
Oh,
having conversations with him early days of LinkedIn and Seth Godin. Seth Godin
oh,
is
that's cool.
super responsive. He's
Really?
one of the best marketers ever. I'll tell you, I got a funny story. I almost got fired for being on LinkedIn early on. I was in B2B sales, making 100 calls a day, and I was doing LinkedIn, and they were like, "What are you doing? Why are you wasting your time on LinkedIn?" I'm like, "I'm connecting with these CEOs, and they're talking to me." And they're like,
Yeah.
"No, pick up the phone and call them." I almost got fired for using LinkedIn.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean that's definitely the old school way. That's what we did back in the day,
Yeah.
trying to get past the secretary. But no, I mean today's world, it's an amazing opportunity. And yeah, I definitely encourage people to leverage it.
Yeah. I sometimes when I'm meeting with a guest like yourself, sometimes I forget that we're actually recording a podcast show and I just feel like we're just shooting the shit here.
No,
But
that's great. That's the way it should be.
I agree. I love this. For people who are interested in connecting with you, maybe getting some help with their IR through LinkedIn, what's a good place for them to start that journey?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Seth Farbman on LinkedIn is the best place. I will warn you, oddly enough, funny story, there is another Seth Hartman out there, and we actually crossed paths. The only difference is he was the former CMO of The Gap and Spotify, and that is not I. He's a big guy. We actually met for coffee once,
Yeah.
just to like figure that out. So yeah, I'm the Seth Farbman not on Spotify. V Stock Transfer, or our website at vstocktransfer.com or sharemedia.co.
Yeah. Did you offer to buy his name? Say, listen, Seth, there could only be
Yeah,
one Highlander. I got to go for your name.
I
No.
think he had dibs. He's a little bit older than
Yeah, he's done some pretty cool things too.
yeah.
What question during this interview should I have asked you, Seth, that I completely screwed up and did not ask you?
You did a pretty awesome job. I think just because you deal with so many people in terms of raising capital and starting companies, like how do you decide when a company is a good idea? When is it just like a pipe dream and not worth pursuing?
Hmm.
Um, and not that I have the answer, but that might have been the question. I think that some of the best businesses are just companies that are trying to solve problems out there, right? I mean, you've got some companies that are luxury and a nice to have, but if you're coming up with an idea that's a have to have because it solves something that the world needs, those are some of the greatest companies. And we love to look at companies as investors that have those corporate compliance solutions as well. So I think that's something that's always an important part for people that are starting out.
Yeah, very cool. In your experience interviewing those, 75 guests who've taken companies public and working with over 900 public companies, right?
Yeah.
What is in terms of path to public? What have you seen? What have you? I got to careful. What is some common character traits of initial founder, taking companies public? Like what are they? What's some motivations behind that to go public?
Yeah, so it's funny. I think that literally the other week, and this just shows how I have no life and I'm just obsessed with, capital markets. I came up with this acronym for that exact question. Why does somebody want to go public? Why do they want to do an IPO? So I came up with it's called caves, that they want to get out of the caves and they want to go into the public markets. Why? I think number one was so that they can uh well, the C was, let's see, was it customers? A was acquisitions. Oh no, the C was actually currency. The C was currency. That this way they can use their stock as currency instead of having the capital to do things. A was for an acquisition. They may not have 5, 10, 15, $20 million to do an acquisition cash, but they could use their stock for an acquisition. V is valuation. Um, you may have two companies that are pretty identical, but one is private, one is public, and the valuations may be better. And E is to get employees. You can be an okay company and employees don't necessarily want to work there, but if you're public and you have stock options and a little bit of the importance of saying I work at a publicly traded company on stock exchange, employees are drawn. And so that CAVE, I think is important. And the S was that it's just a stage. Like sometimes people want to go public because, and we've encountered this often, a lot of with our clients from Malaysia and Singapore and Hong Kong and Japan, they don't even need the money. Like they have the resources, but the S is the stage, the public stage. They want to come to the national exchanges so that they could get up there and get the exposure of telling, who they are and what they're doing.
Yeah, what a great way to end this. Nice job. Knocked it out of the park. Fellow
Thank
deal
you.
makers, as always, reach out to our guests. Their contact information will be in the show notes below. Reach out to them, say thanks for sharing their information and their story, their journey with you. If you have a deal that you'd like to talk about here on the show, thedealscout.com, that's me. Head on over, fill out a quick form, and maybe get you on the show next. Till then, we'll talk to you all on the next episode. Cheers, guys.